Welcome to another episode of the Profitable Home Services Podcast. I am so glad that you can join us today. I know you're busy. I know your time is valuable. So thank you for spending a little bit of your day with me again today. Remember, this is the podcast where we are all about finding those profit leaks in your business and uncovering them so that you can plug them because you can't plug them if you don't know that they're there. So today, why don't you join me as we welcome Karen Hairston. She is a business systems and profitability consultant and a cash flow advisor, and I'm happy to say she's my friend. We are both in a cash flow group together, so we are learning how to be stronger in our cash flow skills as we work with small businesses across the country here. So, with that, welcome, Karen.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Diane.
I'm excited because as I'm holding up for those of you who are watching us on YouTube, Karen's got a brand new book called Stop Growing Broke, Start Growing Profits. And so I thought it was great to bring her on our program today, help her get a little more eyes on her book because it's an amazing topic. She does some great stuff in the systems and processes part of the world. I always felt like, yeah, I was decent in systems and processes, but not compared to Karen. So she's going to be our systems and processes ninja here today. But don't go away. This is a very important topic, as many of you know. Those of you who have started putting systems and processes in your own business, and those of you who are wondering, how do I start? I'm sure Karen's going to share some of that with us today because once you get started, then it's not so hard to keep moving forward. But sometimes I think the biggest roadblock is, how do I start? So let's start with that one, Karen.
All right. Well, first of all, I guess one of the first things to do is recognize what growing broke means, right? And when you might be having systems problems here. I mean, most people don't realize when something is a systems problem, but some of the signs you might notice is, you've been growing really fast and your revenue is great, but your profits are going down. Your customers that usually come back stop coming back. They're not referring people to you. Your great your great employees might be starting to leave, and you're just wondering what's happening there. So some of these are just signs that um, you need to take a look at your systems. And when I say systems, I don't mean like a tech system necessarily. I mean, honestly, a system could start out with just sticky notes on the wall. But what it is, it's a defined process for doing something. And one of the benefits of having a system in place is just for that consistency. So it helps communication, it helps with expectations, it helps when you have new employees. So
I'm gonna I'm
as
going to interject right in there, Karen. A lot of times we start struggling with the fact that we've always had this certain quality level, and now it's starting to slip. We send a crew out there to do whatever it needs to be, or it's an in-house project that whatever it might be, depending on the kind of business. But all of a sudden, we're getting customer callbacks, or we're
Mhm.
getting complaints, or whatever it might be. We're starting to see things different, or it's taking longer than it used to take. Some
Mhm.
of those are also signs that it could be systems related.
Definitely. Yep. The increased callbacks or, what end up being quality issues. And that's why you end up losing your customers too, or it affects your process or your profits because you have to go back so many times to redo the same work, right? So it's way more than you um, thought you were going to have to do. So you didn't price it appropriately, or you priced it appropriately, but just didn't do it right the first time. So
Right,
those are
right.
also definite signs that
For
you should take a look at your
uh-huh.
systems.
For many years in my own business, we used to have this sign that went across the top of one of the walls in our bookkeeping room that said, "Get it done right the first time." Because my team was just, they were sloppy and they weren't caring. They were robotically doing the job. but they didn't care. They didn't have that owner's care that we have, and things were not getting done well. And
Hmm.
so we made this almost like a big poster thing that went all the way across the wall in big letters. Get it done right the first time. And then we started working on training because we realized we had some training issues. Just because I know to do it this way doesn't mean you know it needs to be done that way. And really worked on training and customer service and things like that so that we finally were able to hit that, get it done right the first time, at least most of the time.
Right, right. Well, and one of the other advantages to training is it takes it off your plate, right? A lot of times as the business owner, you end up, you're the face of the company usually when you're a smaller business. So if your employees aren't doing something right, you end up cleaning up the mess, right? And that's
Yes.
really not where you should be focusing. So, you know, those systems and in that training, which is based on systems and having everyone do something the same way all the time is, helps with that quality and your profits, but it also takes it off your plate so you can focus on running the business.
Mhm. Instead of being a fireman
Mhm.
out there with your fire hose, constantly putting out fires because your systems aren't
Exactly.
working. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So now that well, before we even go any further, let's do an example of a system or a process that becomes part of a system. Let's start with a process. What's an example of one that most businesses would have?
So, well, I like to start with the processes that are tied to a customer, right? I mean, all your processes are important, but if you don't have customers or clients, you don't have a business. So I usually, like to have people focus on those first. But, one of those could just be even what happens when you get, whether it's someone fills out, I need information or I want a quote form
Mhm.
on your website, or they call, depending on how you get your leads, but what happens then, right? And if you think when you think about it in what that process is or what it should be, you want to think backwards, right? So what's your goal? And your goal is to get that person who contacted you for information to become a customer. So then you start working backwards and go, well, what do I need to do that? So you need to provide information, and then how do you get that information to them? But even before that, how do you even respond, right? Are you a happy helpful person, or is it a grumpy cranky person who's like, what do you want? You need to, how about customer service with a smile type thing? So
Mhm.
just some of those things. So it could be just a simple 3 or 4 steps and how you do each of those little pieces, right? So even that's considered a process.
Okay. I like that because a process can be very small. It's not the whole system from the time you pick up the phone to the time that sale is made or recorded. It's a piece within that.
Hmm.
And several processes will make up a system. And I think sometimes people get confused on what's a process, what's a system, how do they work together, those kind of things. It may include a checklist of some sort so that you've asked the 5 questions you're supposed to ask or whatever it might be. You've got it a way for them to have a quick look at, okay, here's what I'm supposed to do next.
Exactly. When you're, and that's part of that documenting, or, you'll hear
Mhm.
people call them standard operating procedures
Mhm.
or SOPs. And that's part of it. So not only what are the steps of the process, but how do I know I'm doing each step correctly? And that's where your checklists come in. Especially in a longer process, sometimes not everybody can memorize everything. It doesn't mean they're bad at the process, but just give them a little job aid, a checklist,
Mhm.
or, did I do this, this, and this before I moved on?
And then I think as an owner, sometimes we need to be more clear on what the outcome is because we know it's up here in our head. We know we can see the completed whatever it might be in our head, but that doesn't translate to them. And we need to step back a step and almost like you're talking to a young child in as far as being clear. Not saying that they can't, that they're acting like a young child or anything, but in your head, your process. Give enough detail that they know when they've hit the mark. Because it's really hard to hit the target if the target is constantly moving and it doesn't stay the same from one day to the next. You set up an employee for failure when you do that. And I see that a lot in businesses. It's at the whim of the owner. What kind of mood are they in today? And that
Yeah,
affects the outcome. And that's not the way it should be. It should be the same today and tomorrow.
exactly. It's that consistency. It just helps everybody. And one thing, yeah, it happens all over the place because I think some of it, and people aren't necessarily being demeaning or grumpy on purpose, but they forget how much they know. They're an expert. So you then kind of start to think everybody else knows all that too. So then when you do try to hand it off, whether temporarily or permanently, you think you can say half a sentence and they know exactly what your expectations are. But if you say, here's what I expect at the end, and like you were saying, I think that's a really good way to put it. Just, step it out. You can always combine steps later, right? If you decide you broke it down too much, but it's much easier to put things back together than to pull it apart again. So just think, what do I need to do first? Then what? Then what? Then what? And just keep asking that. And and so you're working in those quality pieces too, or if there's some handoff in there, when John finishes this and it's to this point, he hands it off to Susie. But how do you hand it off? Is it an
Right.
email? Do you throw a paper airplane over, through the van? What do you do,
Is it a checkpoint in a some sort of a CRM and now it moves forward? Yes, so often as an owner, we have the curse of knowledge. We've built this company from the ground up, and so we know all these processes and we forget how much we know. So we have the curse of knowledge. I
Yeah.
know in my company, when we were first setting up our processes, which then became systems, we used what I call the mom test. And we would have my mom, who knows nothing about accounting or anything, we would have her come in and we would hand her a process and
Mhm.
say, okay, mom, can you follow this process in whatever way it was documented? If she couldn't follow it, we hadn't done our job.
Mhm.
And so we'd go back and we would try it again. We'd have her come back another day and we'd have her do several of them when she was here. Some that she was able to do well and others she couldn't. But that was on us because we weren't clear enough. And
Mhm.
we hadn't set that expectation or that information of at what point is this process done. Now, it may not be done in the whole system, but done at it, maybe it's a handoff point, maybe it's a now it goes to here and then it moves over to there. But we miss some of those pieces. But that mom test was great because she had no preconceived ideas and she literally did exactly what was documented. And it was pretty
Mhm.
funny sometimes how bad we were at documenting until we started thinking down. If I was telling a 5 or 6 year old kid how to do something, that's the level of detail we got to. And then she could walk in and she could do these processes. Even
Yeah.
though she may not understand them, she could do them. And we went, success. We finally figured out how to document a process.
Right. Yeah, no, and that's great. Actually, one of the steps, I talk about the 5D systematization process that I use with clients, and it's in my book there. But one of the steps is doing a dry run. So after you've
Mhm.
done a draft of a process, just even as it's currently happening, not even talking about improving it yet, but get it, the first step, get it documented so you can at least get everyone on the same page. But, before you carve it in gold or anything, just take your draft of it, have someone else who's supposed to be, who does that same task or that same process, work through the steps exactly how you wrote them. and just like you had your mom do, and see, and where do they get confused? Where's there not enough information? Where are steps out of order? Because you do it, whoever documented it, you do it every day, right? And you don't think about it.
Mhm.
So even when you review it 3 times,
You you don't
it's
catch it.
still, you're not reviewing it through the eyes of a newbie, right?
No. Yeah. You need a newbie. You need somebody who's not done it on a regular basis to do your
Mhm.
dry run for you that they can say, wait a minute, I don't know where to go next. Something's missing here. Oh yeah, that's right. You need to do this. And show them whatever it is and then add that in your process. So it was pretty comical sometimes at how badly we did, but over time we got better at it
Yeah.
because we started anticipating how much detail a newbie really needs
Hmm.
because they can't read between the lines like
No.
we can.
Right, right. And I guess the other thing is having a real clear picture, and this is what you mentioned, so I'm just reinforcing it, but having that real clear picture of what the end goal is.
Yes.
Because one of the quotes I like to use all the time is, if you don't know where you're going, how do you know when you get there, right? So how
Right.
does that, the last person in the chain of events in that process, how do they know when they're done? Or even before it, if there are some review steps, how do you know it's at least good enough to have someone else review? But you really have to have that defined um, goal at the end.
Hmm. Right. Yeah. Um, I think that is an area that so many of us struggle with of giving that. Let me use the word feedback, and it might not even be the right word, but giving that feedback of here's what done looks like.
Hmm.
Because if we don't tell them, they're just merrily going along their way thinking they've done what we've asked them to do. And realize, not even realizing they're missing the mark, but we've never identified what done looks like.
Right.
So,
Exactly. And I remember, I think it's when we've been talking before, Diane, like, it kind of goes along with setting expectations too, or what's done look like. If someone's out on a job, if you've got a landscaping team, and, do they clean up after themselves when they're done? Have they
yes,
taken all the old stuff away? Have they swept up? You know, when the guys go to, even if it's just lawn mowing, have they blown all the clippings off? If
right,
if
yep,
that's your expectation, you need to be clear about it, or they're going to think, I'm done mowing the lawn and I'm, on to the next customer there. So it's just really being explicit in what you expect. And then you're going to feel much more confident as a business owner handing that stuff off too, right? You used to do it all
right,
yourself. Now you're
yep,
growing. You need more people who can be out, all working in parallel. But, it's your name on the line, and you want them to perform like you want them to perform, and they don't know that. They can't read your mind if you don't tell
right,
them.
yeah, yep. And I think when we can be clear on the steps, the expectation, what done looks like, I think we have employees that are happier and ultimately stick around longer because they're not living in a chaotic world and they don't know, what I did today was okay and 2 days later someone's yelling at me for it. They don't live like that. They live in a world that's like, okay, I know what I'm doing. I'm confident in my job and this is good. So,
Exactly. Well, and the other thing about having that all documented, like a lot of times, or what I recommend people do when they are documenting processes is, if it's not something that the owners, um, documenting, and ideally it's not them because they have other things they should be working on, but you usually take one of your star performers, right? And you document how they do it.
right.
Well, if
Yeah.
they, if you're not doing that and you have multiple people doing the same job and one person does it better, what happens when the other people don't do it quite the same? Well,
Mhm.
your star performer is then always called in to clean up the mess. And so they just get more on their plate, right? It's not like
Right.
anything else is being taken off. They're not making any more money than anybody else, but
Right.
they end up, so, people who aren't doing it quite right, and let's assume the best, and it's just because they don't know, we haven't done a good
Right.
job in training them or documenting the processes, they're kind of getting away doing a lot less work. And then that star performer, they're going to start looking other places to
They
go.
will. Yes. Yeah. So it's very important that we be crystal clear on what do we want? What's our outcome? What are the steps that we want to be able to attain that outcome? And communicate it well, and I'm going to say and often,
Hmm.
because sometimes we tell our team once and we think they got it, but they don't. We have to tell them often, and a lot of these things need to be repeated. Maybe it's monthly to begin with, and then it's quarterly, and then a couple times a year as a refresher. Because sometimes things change, especially if we're using software. We get a new update on a piece of software, and all of a sudden something's different, and now your newbie can't follow your process again. We have to go back and make changes. So this is a
Right,
never-ending job that's never done,
right, right.
fortunately. Mhm.
Yeah, you need to revisit you, and you should always revisit all of your processes, right? Not only to remind people, and then you're going to have, new people coming on, and they might have some good observations, or suggestions that you want to implement too. But also, yeah, sometimes just things change, right? So you started doing things a little bit differently, and then you wonder why business isn't quite going as well.
Mhm.
Well, go back and go, oh, well, we started skipping step 5. We went from, 4 to 6. So just, yeah, reminders. And it's, better to say it too often than not enough.
Mhm. Yeah. Yep. So, Karen, in your book, you have this idea that revenue, people, and systems can't be managed in isolation. Let's talk about that a little bit.
So, what I see a lot and what I've learned over the years is, I mean, everything is connected, right? I mean, I
Right.
really think everything in life is connected one way or the other. But when you're looking at a business, I mean, who's doing implementing your systems or performing your processes and tasks? It's people, right?
Right.
So, and then your systems also affect how you communicate with clients and get clients or customers, how you, uh, how you deliver things, and which then affects your finances, right? And so all three of them are connected. I mean, that's just a real high level explanation. But what I see a lot is people try to address them individually. So if someone's just, says, oh, well, here's the 10 steps to do it, and doesn't take into account, maybe doesn't get input or feedback from the team, it's going to be more difficult to get buy-in for one, and it might not even be correct, right? So then, you've kind of created this divide between the documented system in your team. Or if you're only looking at finances, you might go, oh, profits down, let's start cutting everything. Well,
Hmm.
you can't cut your way to profit, right? So you got to look in what is the issue we need to address. And almost all financial issues are actually systems problems.
They are. I see that so much because I'm on the financial end, you're on the systems end, and we meet in the
Mhm.
middle all the time,
Yep.
because
And
it's not a vacuum. They're not
no,
separate pillars. They constantly overlap.
yep, yep. And your finances give you really good clues. If you're looking at them or have someone help you look at them, give you really good clues where to start, focusing as far as your systems, right? So that, and then just, you got to keep, definitely need good employees, and but you've got your part to do. They don't come in usually pre-trained and awesome. You've
Oh,
got
they
to,
don't?
yeah, I know, darn. You've got to train them. You got to, kind of assimilate them into the culture,
Yeah.
and think, there's a lot of those pieces, but the people are really important too. And you'll see so many solutions that, yeah, like I gave the one only focusing on the finances. Well, then you're missing the other two pieces. Or you only, trying to make everybody happy. Well, that's not solving your systems issue. Or just paying people more. That sure as heck not going to help your finance issues. So you have to look at all of them together. I mean, you can't necessarily be working on every single thing at the exact same time, but they all need to be considered and they all need to be part of your plan. I kind of in the book, I think it's in the book. Oh my gosh, the definitely in the presentation I do about my book. So I just think of it as a Venn diagram or three overlapping circles, right? So you've got your
Mhm.
people, your systems, and your finances, and where all three of those overlap in the middle, that's really the sweet spot.
Mhm. Right. I think all too often when things aren't working well, it's easy to come at it from the finance side because that's the easiest one. Come in and say, okay, we're cutting all overtime, or we're cutting all bonuses, or we're cutting this perk or that perk, whatever it is. And in reality, that might be the last thing you should do. You need to go deeper. And I think too often we take that quick, easy swipe at whatever it is, and then we just head on down our merry way. Meanwhile, our team says, what just happened? Where'd that come from? That came out of the blue. What's
Mm-hmm.
going on? All of a sudden now we don't have whatever it was that you took away. And instead of going in and finding out what's causing inefficiencies in your processes and your systems, who's not trained properly, who maybe has been trained but maybe didn't understand. Because we can run somebody through a training program and they come out the other end and we assume that they're okay with it, but not everybody learns the same way. Some people can sit and listen to a speaker talk, walk out the door, and be fine. Others
Mm-hmm.
have to go do something with their hands to actually make the concept stick. And so we have to be careful when I'm going to use air quotes, of training our team. Are we hitting their learning, I don't know if it's a learning style, whatever it might be, how they
Mm-hmm.
learn, so that they actually can assimilate what you're teaching them and now go and apply it. So I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we don't go deep enough. We're in a hurry. We're owners of a business. We're in a hurry. We're rushing around trying to keep everything rolling, and we give it a surface pass
Right.
instead of digging in deep because it's not comfortable to go deep. Not
Mm-hmm.
comfortable at all. We might find some things that we're doing. We might be doing the drive by delegating where I
Yeah.
see Karen in the hallway. Hey, Karen, can you take care of this for me? Thank you. And hand it off and keep on going.
Yep.
That delegating doesn't work. Karen doesn't know when I need it, how I need it, why I need it, how long it should be, how short it should be, what format it should be in. She just got something put in her hand as I walk down the hallway. That doesn't work. So sometimes I think we have to come back to us as owners and slow down so that we can eventually speed back up. And
Yep.
that slowing down part is really, really hard for a
Mm-hmm.
busy owner to do. But our team will thank us later when we do that.
Definitely. And the one other thing I like to bring up about the quick fixes. So definitely, if you weren't going to say slow down to speed up, I was going to say it. But as far as quick fixes, the other thing people think is like the magic bullet, the silver bullet,
Oh,
is
yeah.
technology. And so
Yeah.
I am totally a technology geek, but I'm also the first one to tell you that it is not going to solve your problems. If it's a finance problem, a person problem, or a systems problem,
Yep.
just throwing technology on top of it is just going to make your problem worse. It increases
Right.
the chaos and it just makes it a total mess. And so you keep doing it and things fall apart more, or your people start leaving going, what the heck is going on?
Mhm.
Or you end up sticking it on a shelf, so to speak, not
Mhm.
using it, and you just dumped how much money into, buying the software. And then if you had some, consultant or something help you get it set up, but you've got to have all the foundational stuff in place first before technology is going to help
Yeah.
you.
And if you are going to go the technology route, you need to have somebody who's going to be your lead on it, somebody who's going to own it. because every time you head into the technology route, you have this up in the air. I don't know what it's supposed to do. I don't know how to make it work. And all of a sudden, I'm supposed to use it. And so you have to have somebody in your team who's who is willing to dig into it. And if you're working with a consultant, that's their primary contact person. And you
Mm.
figure this out so then you can show the rest of the team because it's not cost effective for your whole team to sit around twiddling their thumbs while they're trying to figure out the technology side. So no,
Exactly.
we even encountered this when we changed practice management software. Oh, that was so painful.
Yeah.
So painful because the software didn't do what we were promised it would do. We ended up going back to our other carrier,
Hmm.
and at least there we knew what we were getting. And oh, it was so painful and so much lost time and effort, and because the software didn't perform. And we
Hmm.
thought we had done enough due diligence on it, and obviously we hadn't. We thought we had. We had talked to other people using it, and it still didn't work. So throwing that case, throwing technology at it was a waste not only of money, but tons and tons of hours of time and
Right.
frustration over this piece of software. So
Yeah. It's a whole, that ends up being a whole project in itself. And,
yeah,
just, even for smaller companies, you've got to pick the one that works for you. In fact, kind of the other thing that related to that, if you're, all the reviews, you might talk to people and this is all great and good, or, all these, there's I'm not going to name any software, but there's lots of consultants out there that just implement this project management software, just do this one or just do this one. And the thing is that if you don't have your foundational processes and if you don't know how you want things running, what's going to end up happening is the software is going to dictate your processes. And that is there's a very low probability that that's actually going to be the right process for
right,
your business.
right,
So that's just another reason you've got to have that solid foundation of your processes and systems in place. Not that they'll never change. I'm not saying they're carved in stone, but you need to know how you want your business to work, or the different aspects of your business to work, and what you want it to look like. So
right. I see it a lot in the home service world when they change CRMs as
mhm.
they move from one to another. And if they weren't clear on what they were trying to accomplish and they go to the next CRM and now they have chaos for sometimes 6, 8, 10, 12 months before they finally get this thing figured out and it's working for them. And I just see the frustration they go through when they're in that process. It's really hard. And
Yeah, yeah. And some of those pieces of software, they have so much flexibility, which is good, but flexibility also means it's much harder to implement. You
right.
have almost too many choices.
Yeah. So
And
you have to have your stuff figured out before you head into that world.
right, if you can't say, hey, does it do this, this, and this? Because here, these are my requirements. Here's what I need to be able to do in this piece of software. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's probably not gonna bode well.
Right. Yeah. So if we have a business that is just kind of a mess, the owner's overwhelmed, the employees are overwhelmed, customers are probably not getting the best experience, where would you start?
Yeah, and I was just thinking, I kind of got us off track. You asked this
That's
at the
okay.
beginning there, but yeah. So I mean, first of all, just pick one thing. That's one of the like start with that. If you're
Mhm.
already overwhelmed, and we know you're already busy, even if you're not defining yourself as overwhelmed, just pick one place to start because you'll start having a domino effect. But as I mentioned earlier, definitely start with a process that somehow impacts a client, right? So anything related to sales, marketing, delivery, customer support, those are the ones, look there first, right? Because
Okay.
like I said, no customers, no business.
Mhm.
later, if you need to put into place or improve like your invoicing or accounts payable or something like that, you that does affect the business, but I put those a little bit on the back burner. But so think of all the things in your of your processes that touch clients. And there are lots of different ways to think about it. It could be which task, if you say someone's got to do it, like your team is always rolling their eyes. It's just like the most horrible thing they want to get rid of. Or what's something you as the business owner want to get off your plate? What have you received complaints about from your customers? There's lot really any there's lots of different signs that something could use some attention. And then if you can sort through it a little bit, if you can find one that seems to be a block to something else too. So if you find a really good leverage point, so if I just get this one
Okay.
thing figured out, then I can move on. It will be much easier to address these other issues. That's also a good thing to start. In the book, I have what I call the quick prioritization matrix, and it kind of is just a little checklist, and it can just help you think through some of those questions that I just said. And then there's a little grid, if one of these things that you listed out kind of hits 3 or 4 of these criteria, that might be somewhere you want to start. But on the other hand, maybe it's just something really simple. Maybe you need a quick win for yourself or for your team.
Okay.
Anything that where you're going to see progress and keep working on things. Like I said, just take one thing at a time, but then as you figure out the right process, like how to approach working on these processes, you can start to involve other people. So you're working on things in parallel. And, it's kind of that domino effect. But if you try to bite off more than you can chew, I mean, we've all done it. And then you just end up going, oh, I can't do it. So you just end up
And
not
then,
doing anything, right? And so
yeah.
that, there's something that needs to be fixed. So you know that not doing something isn't a good option.
Okay.
So,
I just feel sometimes they're the home service people I've worked with, they're in such overwhelming chaos that it's really hard to pick one area and actually start doing something.
mhm,
We've even had them talk through a system with me where we've got some sort of a transcription software going, like Otter or something like that in the background. And then we'll upload it to ChatGPT or one of those types of programs and get it to turn this conversation we had into a summary with bullet points. And there's the beginning of a process.
mhm.
Now, it may not probably isn't complete because they're just telling me what to do, and now somebody else can fine tune it and add in, oh, we missed a step, we need to do that step, and actually turn it into a working process. But it's a beginning point. It at least gets you started.
Oh, exactly. And yeah, pick your one thing. And I usually recommend something similar. Like a lot of times, I think another reason that the word process or the word systems freaks people out is because they also might start thinking of flow charts. And some
Oh yeah,
people
yeah,
don't like flow charts, they scare them, they don't know how to read them, which is fine. That's really kind of an end thing. But like you were saying, just record, and in some cases, like just do a video of someone doing the task. So
yeah.
whether it's them doing something on their computer, there's all kinds of screen recording you can use now, whether Zoom or Loom or whatever. But um, maybe going back to a landscaper, how are you putting up this deck? I mean, videotape the whole thing, and then someone can go back and and basically document what they saw. And then that's at
Especially,
least a draft. And then
right.
you're not sitting there going, because it is really hard, just like we were talking about, having that expertitis or the curse of knowledge. It's like, oh, you forget all the little stuff you're just automatically doing. So
Right.
but if you can watch, ideally one of your star performers do something, and then document it from that. At least you have a draft, and then you can
Right.
work from there.
Right. And in today's world, we're all carrying phones with us. And if you're
Mhm.
out on a job site or something, you can record, especially if somebody will speak what they're doing. So you have some words happening at the same time. And now
Mhm.
that becomes an easier system um, to get into your SOPs, whether it's in a video format or it's in an audio or it's a written or whatever. But if you'll talk while it's being done, and
Mhm.
here's what I'm doing. I'm doing this step, and now I'm doing this step, and then I'm going to move over here and do this while it's being recorded. That helps a new person instead of just trying to watch what your hands and your eyes and stuff are doing and keep up with what you're doing. But if you'll say it out loud at the same time, it's a good way, a fairly easy way to get started.
Oh, definitely. And even if maybe you're going to put together the 4 foot thick manual, but however, whether it's online or not, if you're going to do all the pretty documentation later, still keep those videos as
Yes.
examples. You still
Yeah.
want to keep those in with where your documented processes are, once again, so someone can see what it looks like. And especially in something like home services, it's not just reading, you're physically doing
Yeah.
things, right? So
And
to be able to
yeah.
see how something's supposed to be done, it's a very visual thing. That type of work is very visual, and that's how it's going to help people learn.
Right. So tools like Loom or even Zoom, like we're on right now, any of those kinds of tools, your phone, can really make it easier to start the process of setting up your own systems and documenting them
Hmm.
and your
Definitely.
processes. Yeah, yeah. Karen, we are running out of time. This has gone by way too
Okay.
fast.
There's
So
always more to talk about.
there is. Fortunately, listeners, we do have Karen coming back, and we're going to continue this conversation because we knew there was too much here in this world to leave it with just one episode. So she will be coming back and joining me on another episode here where we can continue talking about the profit leaks around your systems. But before we wrap up, Karen, we have our magic question. What is a hidden or unique profit leak that you see when you're working with home service businesses in your world of systems and processes and things?
So I think one of them, I mean, there are definitely more, there's definitely more than one, but one of them I see is trying to price based on competitors rather than knowing
Yeah,
what it actually costs for you to perform the job. Or maybe you're just trying to get more, maybe you do know how much it costs you to perform your work, but you're discounting it to try to be able to compete with the other business down the street. The problem is competing on price is always a bad idea.
right,
But you're definitely gonna obviously lower price, less profit, but you could actually just run your business into the ground. Unless you're a Walmart, price, know first of all what your actual costs are, then figure out what your profit margin needs to be, and then and what is the value of your work too, right?
right,
So if you are the company that is cleaning everything up after you just built a retaining wall, to me, that's totally worth more than the guy doing it for cheap and leaves a mess in my yard. So
yeah,
just, that's, I think one thing is not is not knowing what your work actually costs to do to cover your
right.
cost, and then get the margin out of it.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm so glad you shared that because we had this conversation earlier this morning in my Profit Blueprint Boot Camp. One of the members was talking about how he slipped into a little bit of a scarcity mindset. He had been the highest price provider and realized that he was only closing about 50% of the bids that he'd put out. And he thought, well, I'll just do a second tier of my pricing and be able to capture more of those bids. We'll have more revenue, we'll make more money. And in reality, by the time he It took him a while to realize this. By the time they had done several jobs at the second tier pricing, they realized there was little profit, if any, left over from those. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, their top line revenue was great, but their bottom line profit actually decreased quite a bit because
Mhm.
he bumped himself down to be closer to where the other competitors were instead of staying up there as the higher price leader in the group.
Mhm.
And so it was a really good discussion in our on our coaching call this morning. So it was pretty cool that's what you shared for your leak. So thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Well, and just one more little thing about that too. I mean, if you know you're not overpriced for your market, stick to your guns because what
Yes.
I've seen those other lower priced businesses do, they'll come in low, but then they nickel and dime the person who took that, hired them. They'll nickel and dime them for every single thing. And do you think that person's going to hire them again? Nope.
No.
So you'll
No.
be there to do the good job, do it right the
Right.
first time, and they will totally pay what you
Yeah,
know you're
they
worth.
will. Yes. Yeah. Well, Karen, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing some information, some highlights from the systems and processes of world. And once again, I'm going to put her book up here. It's the Stop Growing Broke, Start Growing Profits. Karen, where can people find your book?
So one thing, so we have it set up. If you go to podcast.stopgrowingbroke.com, you can actually get a free PDF version of the book. You
Okay.
can just download it, or I mean, it's on Amazon. And then if you just want more information in general, my website is stopgrowingbroke.com.
All
So
right. I love it. What a nice, easy website. Stopgrowingbroke.com.
yeah,
Yes. Yeah. I think people forget that the faster they're growing, the more attention they need to spend on their bottom line profits because they start evaporating just
yeah,
because you're moving so fast that things start slipping through the cracks.
right,
Yeah.
definitely.
All righty. Karen, thank you again for joining us today. It's been a pleasure having you on, and I'm looking forward to part two.
Yes, thank you very much for
Dig
the
into this.
opportunity, and I'm looking forward to part two as well.
Yeah, all righty. Thank you, listeners, for sharing part of your day again with us today. Remember, if you want help identifying profit leaks and building out your pricing and service structure to support that growth and the profit that you need, we'd love to help. Our Profit Amplifier program is a group program. Our Profit Transformer program is a one on one coaching program. And currently, we're running a Profit Blueprint Bootcamp, which is a 6 week program where we help you get profit first set up in your business. So reach out to us if you'd like some more information. We'd love to talk to you. We love doing profit impact calls where we can show you at least $50,000 that's leaking out of your business today. Alrighty, we're going to call that a wrap. Thank you so much, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the Profitable Home Services podcast. Bye for now.